I've had the Steam Deck for a little over a month now, and I think I'm ready to give some opinions on it. I'm going to structure this review a little bit differently. I'm not going to discuss the technical specs and the design features in depth. Instead, I'm going to give some of the use cases I've come across and give my opinions on how well it achieves those. I think this is probably more valuable as there are already a ton of videos on the technical specs. Keep in mind this review is based on my experiences with the Steam Deck, and I am decently familiar with Linux. I haven't had to do anything more complicated than pasting some scripts into the terminal, but I understand that for some users even that can be intimidating. That said, if you're unfamiliar with Linux operating systems, I wouldn't worry too much. They're a lot closer to Windows or Mac than you'd expect. Also, keep in mind that 1 month isn't long enough for issues with build quality to appear. I can't comment on whether or not the sticks will drift, the charging port will become loose, or any other possible issues, because I've simply not had the device long enough. Before I get into the use cases, I want to have a rant about Steam's traffic light compatibility system. If you want to skip this, feel free to skip this chapter in the video. It has 4 systems of classification. Great on deck means that the game should work out of the box without any problems. Playable means the game should work, but will have some minor hurdles to overcome. Unplayable means you're going to have to put a lot of effort in to get the game running on deck, and often the game won't even launch. Finally, untested simply means that Valve hasn't tested the game yet. The problem here is that the playable category is far too broad to be useful. Any game that requires any text input using the on-screen keyboard is automatically downgraded to playable. A playable game can be a game that works fine without any tweaking, but requires you to input your character name once using the on-screen keyboard. In the case of Guilty Gear Strive, you only need to input your username once on the first launch of the game, but it still gets downgraded to playable. If that was the standard for all playable games, then that would be fine, but this isn't the case. A playable game can also be a game that doesn't have any native controller support and requires you to find a community layout to play the game. In the case of XCOM 2, I had to spend quite a while customizing layouts to get something playable, and even then, it required using a fair amount of mouse emulation on the right trackpad. This mouse emulation isn't terrible, but it's also not comfortable for extended use. It's similar to using a trackpad on a laptop. Another playable game was Oblivion, a game which probably is playable with the default layout, although would require you to use mouse emulation for menus. I spent 10 minutes downloading a mod to add controller support, and this let me easily fix the problem and made the game a joy to play. It was even better than playing on a normal gamepad because I could use the trackpads for extra hotkey slots. I understand the need for a clear set of guidelines when categorizing these games, but I can't help but feel that this approach is a little bit too broad. As it stands, the difference in games marked as playable makes the label almost useless. I wish playable games had a score to indicate their ease of use at a glance. My problems with these labels aside, it is nice that Valve have gone to the effort of testing compatibility with games at all. This is something they didn't need to do, so it's hardly a detractor for the system. The first use case I'm going to mention are games with native controller support. These are games which are already designed to be played with a controller and already support the input method. This is the ideal use case for the Steam Deck. These games almost always work without any extra effort. You have the option of binding the extra buttons and trackpad, which can also make the Steam Deck superior to a standard gamepad. The deck also has gyro support, which I know many prefer for FPS games, although I personally wouldn't play an FPS game without a mouse, so I can't comment on how well this works. I don't have many criticisms of how the Steam Deck handles games with native controller support. It's clearly what the Steam Deck has been designed around, and it works near flawlessly. I played both Hollow Knight and Sekiro on the Steam Deck, and I found that both worked perfectly. If these are the kinds of games you want to play on the Steam Deck, I massively recommend it. This was the main reason I bought the deck. Almost any game that you're already playing with a controller on PC will work seamlessly on the deck. I play a lot of indie games, especially platformers, and many of these work great on gamepad. The Steam Deck feels like it's built for playing indies and console games. Native controller support already covers a lot of the games you'd want to play on a device like this, but a lot of games don't have controller support. These can be older games that were released before controller support was standard, or games that simply weren't designed around a controller at all. These games will almost always require some tweaking to play. The main form of tweaking is through input mapping. The Steam Deck has an impressive set of options for configuring input. In addition to all the usual controller buttons, the Steam Deck has 2 trackpads, a gyroscope, and some extra back buttons. The trackpads are by far the standout addition here. It's easy to add radial menus with extra shortcuts. The other common use for the trackpad is for mouse emulation, which in many games is unavoidable. You're also able to choose from community layouts created by other players. These are sorted by playtime and usually good enough to make the game playable. If you're not completely satisfied, you can edit these layouts to your liking. At first, the layout configuration menus seemed daunting, but it didn't take long for me to learn how to make quick tweaks to whatever control scheme I was using. Another form of tweaking is modding. Some older PC games also released on consoles, but the PC port didn't support controllers. Many of these games have mods to add the controller support back in. This does require some work in desktop mode, but it's well worth the effort. Most of the time, all that's required is dragging and dropping some files into your game directory. Through a combination of these, I found I was able to get almost everything I wanted to work at a playable level. The quality of the experience varied wildly, however. Oblivion worked like a charm after a little bit of modding and messing around with control layouts. The mods added functional controller support, and with the touchpad shortcuts, I was able to get a better experience than I would have had playing on a normal controller. Games which are more mouse intensive are more problematic. Anything requiring precise or quick mouse movement is almost entirely out of the question unless you can make use of the touchscreen. Although for turn-based games this is less of an issue, I still don't think I could see myself sitting down for a long play session using the trackpad. It's just not that comfortable. Games without native controller support are a case-by-case basis. If you're not willing to put a little bit of time and effort into getting them working, then I can't really recommend the Steam Deck for this use. If you are okay with the extra work involved, I've had some great experiences playing these games on the Steam Deck after just a little bit of fiddling around. Just keep in mind that some games are never going to be a great experience no matter how much you try. Unfortunately, I can't make a blanket statement that will cover everyone. You need to make an assessment based on the games you want to play, as well as your tolerance for tweaking games to make them playable. While you can technically play games which require heavy use of the mouse, I'd much rather play them on a desktop instead. I'd get the Steam Deck primarily for games which do have controller support, and treat any other games you can get to work as a bonus. I've heard a lot of people say that they want a Steam Deck as an emulation machine. Depending on what you want to emulate, it's a little bit overpowered for the job, but that doesn't mean the deck isn't a joy to play old games on. I was surprised by how easy it was to set up. While I was expecting it to take around an hour, it actually only took 15 minutes. I used EmuDeck, which made the process easy. You just run an install script and it installs emulators for almost every platform you could think of. It even installed a Vectrex emulator. EmuDeck also creates a folder for you to put ROMs in, and provides the ROM Manager tool. This tool automatically scans your downloaded ROMs and adds them as shortcuts on Steam. This isn't required, but it's a nice option. Once the shortcuts are made, you can go to the community controller layouts and find one to your liking. Since the deck has extra buttons, many layouts map these buttons to options like save states or fast forward. Once you've done that, you can open the game and play it seamlessly on deck. While I'm not surprised that emulation is possible, I am surprised by how easy it is. Emulation adds hundreds of thousands of new titles to the deck's library. It's a game changer. If emulation is all you want to do, then there are cheaper options out there. But the deck is a great emulator and a great handheld gaming PC. Being an emulator also means that the system will never be out of date. Even if in 10 years' time it struggles to run new games, there's so many old ones to experience. The idea of a truly portable PC is tempting. Not a tablet, but a full-blown desktop OS on the go. Unfortunately, the Steam Deck doesn't make a great portable PC. The desktop mode is more similar to what you'd get on a traditional PC than a tablet. To navigate, you're basically stuck with the on-screen keyboard and mouse emulation. It's functional for basic needs, but for anything more involved, you're going to want to plug a mouse and keyboard in. I've been using a USB-C hub, and it's worked fine for a screen, a mouse, and a keyboard. This turns the Steam Deck into a much more functional PC, but it does sort of defeat the point of portability. While the Steam Deck can perform all of the expected PC functionality in a pinch, it's hardly designed for it. If you're looking at the Steam Deck as an alternative to a gaming laptop, keep in mind that gaming is really what the Steam Deck is designed for. It's no substitute for a PC, and it's not trying to be. It's a poor choice for a productivity machine. The Steam Deck is first and foremost a gaming device. I think the Steam Deck is a great device, and I was impressed at what it's capable of. It has an impressive library of games out of the box, and if you're willing to put in the extra effort, the possibilities are staggering. Even if you never decide to play anything other than the games with native controller support, the library dwarfs what's available on consoles like the Switch. The Steam Deck bridges the gap between a handheld games console and a PC in a way that I've never seen before. I'm sure future revisions will only get more refined. Hopefully this video helps you to decide if the Steam Deck is something you're interested in. Thanks for watching, make sure to leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you all next time.